Hey, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for putting everything together, not only today, but also yesterday. Great hosts, and hopefully you can enjoy what we're putting as a show for you together today. My talk is about how technology has never really limited creativity. So if there's a message that I want to put out there today is, don't allow the blockchain sort of limit the things that you can do. But maybe before I start, maybe I can sort of give you an introduction about myself and how I ended up in this mess. So initially I studied economics and econometrics, and later on I did an MSc in health management and health economics. I was one of the lucky ones actually that managed to apply my studies in the real world. I got to work for a big bank, and I saw sort of all of the toxic behavior back then of, let's say, bank bros, or whatever we want to call it. And then I moved into healthcare, where I got to see sort of the business side of healthcare, which can also be quite ugly. With a little experience that I had back then, I decided sort of to take a path of my own, and I started my first company now over a decade ago, which was Julio. Julio was essentially a Netflix for fitness, but what I was interested back then is exploring new technology. A thing called WebRTC, which was real-time communications over the web, had sort of first appeared, and I started building on that technology. Today, this is what you see as Apple Fitness. And about 6.5 years ago is where I deep dive into sort of the gaming and blockchain space. We tried to build our own solo chain outside of an ecosystem. We learned a lot about the technology. We also learned sort of all of the difficult parts of building a community. So yeah, just a few years ago, Cedric, Andre, and myself, we started Ajuna Network here in the Polkadot ecosystem. What really attracted us was not only the underlying technology, but sort of this mentality of builders that was around. Currently, I live in Switzerland. I have 2 kids. I still play video games as much as I can, and I have a Swiss Bernese mountain dog, which soon is going to be heavier than me. So I moved from, let's say, the corporate world into the crypto world, which actually is even more toxic than the banking world. And if you combine it with a gaming space, you have a pretty explosive combination. Just to give you an idea, Alexis Ohanian, which is the founder of Reddit, one of the, let's say, the beloved kids of the internet, decided a few days ago to just explain to the whole gaming industry how this new model, play to earn, is going to take over. Obviously, that's the easiest thing to do. Just mention the word play to earn on Twitter, and you're going to get a shitstorm from everyone. From the gaming industry, where we had developers telling him how he lacks the fundamental understanding of everything, even our own Alice and Bob, who said, this is delusional, right? No one is paying to watch you play games. No one is interested in you playing. Well, I'll talk with Alice and Bob, but the reality is that over a decade ago, there was something called Twitch. And then, a number of other streaming services would do exactly that. They're paying people to play games, and people are actually interested in watching other people play. So, but why is there all of this hype around gaming? It's pretty simple. It's straightforward. It is the biggest entertainment vertical by far, right? It sort of eclipses both the movie industry as well as the music industry, and it's going to keep growing. There's over 3 billion gamers in the world, whatever that means. Basically, the message here is that just check your phone. You probably have a game playing on it. But I think what the most interesting part about why there's so much hype around gaming is that gaming at its best will always manage to abstract the technology from the end user, which is a big part of what we talk about onboarding new users. So, and because we wanted to get to the application layer as fast as possible, that's why we built Ajuna, and that's why we built Ajuna in this ecosystem. We wanted to have the trust and security that Polkadot provides us in order to build our own infrastructure. And then all of the decisions that were made are sort of based on 2 things. Where can we invest in a future technology which will help the industry? And how can we start building on the application layer as fast as possible? So, where does Web3 gaming specifically, let's say, fit into all of this picture? Well, it's probably just a very tiny drop in a pond, but the ripples that it creates is sort of what the interesting part of it here is. And looking back in sort of the adoption of technology historically is usually a very good leading indicator to see how a new technology evolves and at what point it starts actually onboarding that mass audience that we're all looking for. So I'll play a little game here, which is like going back in history. And I think one of the first things, an easy example that I can remember myself, was that back in 2000, we had the introduction of the Nokia phone, right? Somebody decided, hey, I'll build a very simple game, right, called Snake, which what it was doing, it was utilizing the technology it had in front of them very well. A very simple dot matrix screen with a keypad, and you could move your snake around. Now, it sounded revolutionary, but the reality was that in that same year, you had the PlayStation 2 launching, right, where there you had rich games, pretty amazing experiences. Now, did people who were playing Grand Theft Auto on PlayStation said, hey, F this, I'm going to move to Snake? No. But what it did do, it sort of gave some developers this idea that, hey, maybe there's another device that we can start thinking about building applications on. Now, later on, this would sort of lead into what we call today mobile gaming. And then just a few years later, that's when the real big change happened. Because yes, mobile phones was a new technology, but still what we were doing is using same business models and same type of games or game loops that we're used to up to that point. But then smartphones came along, and most importantly, the app stores. And the app stores for the gaming industry changed everything. It probably saved the gaming industry. Because then, that sort of sparked the creativity of developers not to only create new games for a different platform, but think about new business models. There's no free-to-play, there's no pay-to-win, there's no play-to-earn unless there was that moment where those app stores triggered sort of that creativity. So where are we today? Pretty much stuck in the middle, right? Because we have a very cool, interesting new technology, which is sort of blockchain, if we can put it sort of generally. And at the same time, we're trying to build with it and attract, billions or whatever you want to talk of users. But the problem is that it actually feels like we're building applications and making investments when the audience is the equivalent of people having a Windows phone. It doesn't matter. Nobody has a Windows phone, so if you're building something for it, who's going to use it? Now, maybe I can add a software example of what I'm trying to say here, because, hardware is a bit more difficult. But some of you may remember that sort of close to 20 years ago, somebody told us, hey, there's something called an MP3. And in my eyes, that was the first time I understood or started thinking about a digital item or a digital asset outside of gaming. Suddenly somebody was telling me that, no, you don't need to have a CD. It's an MP3 file. Was it simple? No, because they were telling you, hey, you need to download this software, which is called Napster, then try to download another, couple of different extensions, codecs, things like that, so you can play an MP3 file. Spend about 20 minutes downloading a song, hope at the end of it that it's actually a song and not a virus or anything like that, and then download another thing, which was called Winamp, to actually play your MP3. And if you think about it, it sounds quite similar to what we're doing today with wallets. Hey, have you heard about crypto? Super easy. All you have to do is get a wallet and go on an exchange, get a token, and blah, blah, blah. It's about 10 steps. But nothing different than what we were doing 20 years ago. So where does that leave us? So yes, gaming is popular. Yes, the technology is young. But sure, the addressable market is tiny. So what do? In my point of view, there hasn't been a better time to start building in this ecosystem. Why? Because, first of all, this technology, blockchain, is really the first technology that puts the user in the center of it. We're not the product, right? We're not the commodity, which is what we have become in sort of Web 2, but it's a technology built around us. Now, there's also never been a better time to build in Polkadot. Why? Because we've spent the past few years building on that infrastructure and sort of making sure that we can create sort of that, layer that we need to build on top. But as you probably can feel, most parachains, most teams are now switching towards the application layer. So having the shared security that Polkadot can do, sort of the vast power that palettes can unlock in terms of the type of tools that they can give to developers, and sort of that safety that, this is a technology that is meant to scale. My advice would be lean into the technology as much as you can and embrace it. And that's what we have decided sort of to do with Ajuna Network, which is try to embrace the technology, not try to fight it that much. Try to create sort of Web3 experiences which are contained, but utilize everything that this technology has to sort of offer, as hard as it can be, and try to build it with and for a community. So the first thing that we decided to do is, how do we craft an on-chain product or an on-chain game? Obviously, it starts with a concept. We sort of try to figure out what it is that we can provide to a community in terms of, again, always thinking from a gaming perspective. So the questions that we try to answer is, how do we create a community-building product that is engaging? How do we start taking the NFT out of the equation? Because if you think about how NFT drops have been happening over the past year, it always starts with somebody telling you, hey, this, whatever it is, a picture, this and that, has value, right? Not because they've proven it to you, but because they tell you. And they tell you the only way to obtain it is by paying a fee, getting whitelisted, and so on and so forth. So we try to reverse engineer that sort of type of process. Try to create your own, let's say, NFT, in our case, your own avatar, through playing a game. And by the end of it, as most game loops are supposed to, the feeling that a game loop is supposed to sort of create is that by the end of it, you feel that whatever I created or whatever I obtained has some personal, at least, value to me. And we had to deal with a few sort of really difficult questions. How do I deal with the 12-second blocks on Kusama? User experience is going to be pretty bad. How do I deal with onboarding, right? Because I have to tell everybody to get a wallet, you know. Proudly, we had Polkadot.js as our first choice in our first season. But yeah, there's different options. It's hard, right? And then we had those 12 seconds. But again, creativity can always work around the limitations of the technology. What we chose to do with those 12-second blocks was we created this clock, let's say. This clock had 12 different constellations. These constellations had an association which was then based on the different forces of our avatars, and you had to time it. So there was a strategy behind it. I need to see when that clock that we have created with different constellations was at the right time to hit the right avatar so I can do the upgrade. Really what that did is allowed us to take something which is really painful, waiting for 12 seconds, and put it into the game loop. So for you as a user, it didn't feel that you're wasting time, but something is happening during those 12 seconds that you have to figure out. So yeah, we really leaned into the technology and embraced it. Even with the tokens, right? You know, the problem is, yeah, but I want to give tokens to people, but tokens are difficult. Give them for free, right? Because tokens, we're giving them out for engagement. So I give you a token in order to be able to come and play my game and engage with it. It's the equivalent of a freemium model. And we're not going to stop there, because one of the things that we're going to continue looking into and we're going to be sort of sharing in a couple of months is what we call our on-chain missions. So what's the idea here? That you've spent some time creating that, let's say, NFT, and now you want to figure out what else can I do with it, right? And when we're talking about sort of Web3 and the type of things that we're trying to push, which could be concepts like staking, right? It could be concepts like voting. It could be concepts like going to the treasury. We can create that into a simple game. So for example, take your awesome Ajuna avatar, go get a pilot's license, then go get a spaceship, go to a planet, stay there for 12 days, and let's say get some minerals. What we're actually doing is telling somebody, hey, take your NFT or take your tokens, go there and stake them for 12 days, right? Then maybe you can go to another chain and go vote for something. So by putting them into a game loop, we hope to be able to give sort of native users of this space a different way that they can start thinking about how they can utilize all of these different features that sort of blockchain can give to you. And maybe a few sort of final thoughts that I can sort of share with you. Will gaming change the world? Probably not. But gaming is the Trojan horse to mass adoption, and it's always been, right? Even if you look today, sort of traditional Web 2, we say that sort of the gaming industry is about a $200 billion industry. Over 100 billion of it is the mobile phone. So people think about Sony, about sort of PlayStation and Xbox as the biggest gaming platform is this, sorry. And the reason why it it is because gaming managed, even in sort of the previous generation, to hide all of this technology in the background. As today, if I tell you, look, go download this game, I'm never going to tell you go download this game because it's running on Xcode and sort of supported by Google, Amazon Web Services. But that's what we're currently doing in this space. We're throwing technical jargon to the people where we need to be giving them experiences. So yeah, think of gaming just as the easiest way to showcase the advantages of the technology, hide its ugly face, and onboard as many users as you can. Yeah, thank you for your time. You can always learn more about Ajuna Network in our sort of channels. The best way sort of to interact with us is on our Discord server. That's where we like to hang out. That's like we like to sort of interact with the community. And yeah, if there's any advice that I can sort of give to you right now is lean into the technology, sort of embrace it with its limitations. It's always been like that with new technologies, and understand sort of what your audience is. So, thank you for your time.
I have a question, if I may. How many people is in your team? How many people is behind?
So currently we're about 10 full-time employees in the team. Initially when we were sort of last year at our peak, we're about 15, 16. But yeah, currently we're around 10, and I think we're sort of hitting a pretty good balance. I think it's quite natural that you're going to see a lot of teams, including us, sort of changing their team compositions over this year. And I think it has to do with the fact that quite a lot of us last year spent time on the infrastructure side, sort of making sure that we can secure everything, see that it works, understand what it is that we're doing. But now you see sort of this tendency that we're sort of all rushing towards the application layer. So you need a different set of skill set, different set of people to onboard.
So, and you have also shown us like the characters. So can we already try the game, or can we just get the characters? Like, because this wasn't really mentioned, or I didn't register this. So what's the status, or yeah?
Yep. So we run our first season of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars in February. The second season is going to start probably around Decoded. We will let you know, but that's sort of our goal. And the way that you can sort of get those avatars, it's the easy way, go play the game and get it. But obviously then there's internal marketplaces inside those games that you can go and get them on your own.